I first heard the voice of God when I was 9 years old. I felt very drawn to give myself totally to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. That calling sort of faded away as I got distracted by the world and things like that. When I was in college, my first semester of college, I felt very lonely, and so I started making adoration at the parish church here at St. Stephen's, and the more time I spent with the Lord, the more I felt that He was asking something of me. And finally I discerned that He was calling me to be His bride. And at first I was horrified and happy at the same time. I didn't know how to respond to it. But the Lord gave me a deep peace, and I felt like He told me, I just want you to trust me, I will do everything for you. To know whether it's actually a calling from the Lord, the first characteristic is tremendous peace, a peace that you can't produce on your own. And what also happens is that it keeps coming back over and over. It's relentless. The Lord is the hound of heaven, St. John of the Cross says. And when the Lord is calling you to something, He's going to keep at it because He knows that's what's going to make you happy. He made you for Himself. So when you have that peace, if that thought keeps coming back to you, it's good to act on it because it's probably the Lord knocking. You can tell when things are from yourself, when either it doesn't leave a peace or it comes one time and never returns again. But this thought, this conviction kept coming back to me. And when I acted upon it, the more I acted upon it, the more I sought out, the more I searched for a community, the more my peace and joy increased, and I drew closer to the Lord. I had a deep fear of commitment initially. I felt, Lord, what if I can't do this? What if this isn't really what you want? What if I make a mistake? And I felt like I just needed to step out in faith, that if I just gave myself to the Lord and surrendered to Him, that He was going to guide me on the right path. Surrender is a difficult thing, but the more you come to know the Lord, the more you realize how good He is and how much you can trust Him. At first, when I was discerning, I sort of had all the attention focused on me. How am I going to respond? What do I have to do? But the more time I spent with Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament, the more time I prayed to Our Lady, spent time with Scripture, just focused on the Lord, I realized the Lord is so much greater than our hearts. And that gave me the peace to surrender that He was in charge of my life, that all He wanted me to do was to step out in faith, to embrace Him with that trust. And even though there was fear, all the way through my formation. I still felt fear, I still felt doubt. Even though I had all these signs, all this confirmation, I still felt the fear. But every day I would just say, Jesus, I believe this is what you want. I know you will give me the strength that I need to carry out this call. Trust is incredibly important. Jesus actually said that of all sins of distrust wound Him more than anything else. He said that trust is the most important thing that you can have in your faith, because ultimately God really does everything anyway. It really is just a surrender to His love, to His goodness, and to His power. So it's just, trust really does become everything. I never really felt alone, to tell you the truth. That must have been a grace that was given to me. There are times that I felt like, who do you think you are? Do you think you're holier than other people? But that response came from more than other people than from myself, and of course not from the Lord. There are many of our sisters actually who, when they were discerning their call, they were really tempted to abandon the follow of the call because they felt like the lives that they had lived, past life, how can I possibly be a nun? Look at what I've done. Look at who I am. In my case, I really feel like the Lord protected me from that. I never felt alone in that process. I always felt the Lord was guiding me. the best advice I can give is to just cling more and more to God. And that what's going to happen is He's going to fill that void. He's going to fill that fear, replace it with His peace. I also recommend, for those of you who do not have one already, a spiritual director is incredibly important. Having a priest that you trust, that you can talk to, maybe another religious, who can help you deal with these feelings of, loneliness and fear. It's best to talk to a priest as soon as possible, as soon as you start feeling these things. It's good to strike while the iron's hot. So if you have a priest that you know, that you can trust, even if it's not going to be a spiritual director, but just someone who can give you advice, that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can reveal your fears to someone that's not going to, put you down or make you feel, that you're inadequate, but that will guide you, sincerely to the Lord, is seeking to guide you. So I would say the sooner you go to talk to a priest, the better. Now, just because you go to talk to the priest doesn't mean you automatically have a vocation. But it gives you that clarity and it gives you a support that you wouldn't otherwise have. So it's good to go talk to someone, share with someone you trust about your vocation so that they can help lead you on the right path to the Lord. A lot of parents will feel a lot of fear when they feel like their son or daughter may have a vocation. But in reality, it's a tremendous gift to the family to have their daughter as a sister or their son as a priest. If your son or daughter comes to you and says, Mom, Dad, I think the Lord might be calling me to be a priest, or if you're a young woman, to be a sister, probably the best thing you can do is not react. Is just one way or another. Or the best thing to do is to just support them and say, okay, well, let's take this to prayer. If you need me to help you to, look for different communities, look for different order, if you need help finding a priest to talk to, I'm here. If you want to talk about it with me, I can talk about it with you. Really support them in that seeking. That may be your son or daughter, but the Lord's plan for our lives is infinitely greater and more beautiful than anything that we could ever plan for ourselves or could plan for another. And it's hard. It is a sacrifice. But if you think about it, this is what we're all called to. In heaven, we belong totally to God. Our whole life is meant to gear us to heaven. There is no other reason we're on this earth except to love God. And the way that we are called to love God, is the same for every person. It may be lived out differently, but we are all called to that complete and total self-giving to God who loves us. Visiting the order is very important because not only do you get to know the sisters, you get to see their life, but they also get to see you and get to know you. And that's a great process of discernment for the community as well as for yourself. After you feel this call, and maybe you've talked to a priest and he thinks, you may have a call, then it's probably good at that point to go visit. The visits don't have to be long. We have girls that just come for a day or two, spend the day with us. And what will normally happen is we have girls come for like a weekend, and they just kind of live our life, discern with us. There's no pressure. And then if they feel like, maybe this is something I might be called to do, they can come back for a longer visit next time. In my instance, I visited 3 communities before I found the one the Lord wanted me to give my life to. And for me, that was just my path. There are other young women that, they find it on the first try. And some, it takes years to find. But practically speaking, when you go and you visit the community and you spend time, with the sisters or with the priest, you're going to find that everything just clicks, that you just fit in. In my instance, it was almost like when I went to go visit the order, it was like this order was made for me. I was made for the order, but it was like every single thing that I had always longed for my entire life, that I always felt drawn to, was in that community. And talking to other religious, other priests, they've had very similar experiences, that it was like everything that they had experienced or yearned for throughout their lives was becoming materialized. It was becoming concrete in this vocation. For those of you who may be feeling a call to the religious life, to the priesthood, whether it's been going on for a long time, whether you're feeling just the first stirrings of it, the best piece of advice I can give you is what Pope John Paul the Great gave to the world: be not afraid. It's to step out in faith, to cast out into the deep. Our God is so much greater than our hearts. And, you know, He's going to give you that peace when we follow the call that God, and we follow that vocation that God has called us to. That is what's going to give us happiness.